So we know that there are certain new duty holder roles created by the Building Safety Act, but I don't think we know very much about what they are, or indeed whether or not there's a risk that a lender could find themselves having to fulfil one of these roles. Can somebody cast some light on that?
Yeah, shall I start? Let me deal with the inoccupation phase first, and here we come across the roles of principal accountable person, or PAP, and accountable person, or AP. Now, the AP is responsible for the structure and exterior of the building. The AP's duties are to assess building safety risks, keep these under review, take reasonable steps to reduce building safety risks, report certain occurrences to the building safety regulator, and retain the fire safety documentation. And also, if the AP is stopping in their duty, they hand over the information to their replacement. If there is only one AP, they are also the PAP, or principal accountable person. The PAP is responsible for ensuring that fire and structural safety is being properly managed for the whole building. The PAP duties basically encompass those that I've just outlined for the AP, plus the PAP is responsible for registering the HRB, and that's happening now. It started in April, and it has to be done by the end of September, and also applying for the building assessment certificate for the HRB to the building safety regulator, preparing the safety case report, which is the report dealing with building safety risk management during the inoccupation phase of the HRB, and preparing the residents' engagement strategy and complaint system, because let's not forget, engagement of residents is also a very important part of the Act. There are detailed regulations to help you ascertain who the PAP and the AP are, and again, they are worth looking at in some detail.
Yeah, and it's also just worth mentioning here the new duty holder roles for the construction phase. So these broadly follow the CDM regulation roles of client, principal designer, principal contractor, etc. So they shouldn't be too unfamiliar terms, but what exactly these will look like will depend on the secondary legislation, which we are still waiting to see. These aren't going to be any more relevant to lenders than the equivalent CDM roles, so I don't think lenders need to concern themselves too much with these, but it is just worth being aware that they exist.
So the scenarios of risk for a lender really come in at the point of enforcement of security and step in, and will depend on whether the building is in the in-occupation phase or the construction phase. So for our purposes, is it an investment lend or a development lend? The extent of the risk will depend on the nature of the enforcement and whether you're acting as a mortgagee in possession or appointing a receiver. If a mortgagee in possession, then the lender obviously assumes the position of the borrower, so would technically be deemed as the AP or the PAP. So in these circumstances, a lender would need to know what their obligations are, what stage the building is at, and how far, if at all, the borrower has already complied with the regulations.
That's right, and we know lenders tend to use step-in rights as a last resort, but the potential for finding themselves as an accountable person or principal accountable person, the additional information that they require, and the obligations on the AP or PAP may mean that lenders are even less inclined to do it. Lenders need to be alive to this when they're considering their security package, and if they really are left with no choice but to step in, we strongly recommend that they seek legal advice before doing so.
Okay, so the key point here is that the borrower, whether it's a development loan or an investment loan, is likely to be the AP or the PAP. So monitoring the borrower's compliance with the regulations is vital, so that the lender can pick up early if there are any possible breaches or circumstances likely to lead to a breach. The lender may need to consider how they can support the borrower in satisfying their obligations. If there are unresolved breaches, it could impact the value of the asset and therefore affect the lender's ability to recover the full loan in the event of enforcement. The borrower will likely need the lender's assistance, as it may be that some of the breaches require a material capital expenditure, the total of which is not recoverable from leaseholders or third parties in full, and any sums that are recoverable are likely to be significantly capped. And this can obviously come by way of additional loan funds, could be equity investment, or could be mezzanine funding.